right, let's try that sound check one more time. Test 1, 2. Much better. All right. We are live, it looks like. Everything seems good. Hello, hello. Welcome to another Tuesday Ableton Office Hours live stream. My name is Zaak Kerstetter, and this is what I do every week. What's up, After Party? How you doing today? You're always like the first one in here. I appreciate that. So for those of you who are perhaps joining us for the first time, or are watching this video later down the road as it gets uploaded to the channel, Tuesday streams are mostly for just kind of hanging out and talking about whatever it is you guys want to talk about, as long as it is somewhat tangentially related to music or music production in some way. That's what I am here for. So I'm here to answer your questions if you have any. I also have lots of just random things I will sometimes just end up talking about if you guys don't have any questions for me. But as of right now, I do not have anything particularly in particular lined up in terms of content. So this is your guys' time. So let me know if you have any questions, anything you want to know about when it comes to making music with Ableton Live. That's what I'm here for. On top of that, I also do just want to let people know that this is the Tuesday stream. This is kind of what it's like. And then on Fridays, we do a song feedback stream where people, including you, can send me tracks and I will listen to them and give my feedback. And that's kind of the deal. All right, let me make sure everything is working. YouTube is telling me it's not getting any data. But as far as I can tell, everything else is fine. Okay, but it's fine now. Sweet. So what would you guys like to get into today? After party, any particular topics you want to get into? Also, after party, you're the one who was asking about VS, video synth, a while back. Did you get a chance to like play around with it and use it a little bit more? Did you like dive deeper into it and make some cool with it? So I think today, what I would like to start talking about, if nobody minds, is maybe a little bit of operator. So I made a video recently talking about kind of like basics of synthesis and mostly subtractive and additive synthesis and how those kind of work and kind of the science of that. But I've not yet made the FM synthesis video, and that's coming up. It's on the docket of things I'm going to be doing. So I feel like if nobody else has anything else, I might get into a little bit of FM today in kind of preparation for making that other video. So afterwards, talking about he's got some 808 samples, and he's got them all sorted, and when you drag them into simpler, it warps the length. Is there any way to avoid that? So depending on what you're going for, there's two kind of different ways to approach it. So yeah, so if you pitch up or down. So let's grab a 808 kick. So something like this. So just naturally, the way a sampler behaves, and in this case, simpler, C3 will be the original pitch of this. And then as you pitch up or down, it will pitch up and down, but it naturally will, it does the opposite of warping. It actually speeds it up and slows it down. So if you want it to always be the same speed, you have to turn warp on. Warping will make it so that if you play it at a higher pitch, it's the same length as something at a lower pitch. So in your situation, it's not actually warping it. warping it keeps it the same length as you change pitch. Whereas when warp is turned off, pitch and time are connected. So as you play it in a higher pitch, it's faster. And as you play it in a lower pitch, it's slower. So that's the secret there. Yeah, warping actually allows you to maintain the timing. One thing that's also worth kind of pointing out when we're talking about something like this, this warping is only available in Simpler. If you're using Sampler, you can't do that. There is no warp option inside Sampler in here. Yeah, the behavior of samplers, it can be a little weird sometimes if you're not used to it. But that's the kind of thing that will, especially if you're working with like loops or things like that, you were to toss like a little percussive loop in here. So if you had something like this will change speeds as I pitch it up and slow it down. And so if you want to maintain speed, you turn warp on, and then you can change pitch with it, have it also maintaining timing. So it's probably more important for things that are actually loops that you're going to be tossing inside a Simpler, and that way it stays on time with the grid, and it'll stay quantized with the grid as you are playing it at different pitches, because pitch and time are innately connected. That might be a topic for a video. I might get into a little bit the relationship between pitch and time. What's up, Stan? How are you doing today? Yeah, I think understanding relationship between pitch and time and how warping affects, like warping generally allows you to disconnect pitch and time. So turn warp on, and that allows you to connect to do that. Hey, Jeanette, how are you? She's got some mixing headphones. Nice. Yeah, sometimes it's nice when you get a new pair of headphones and you just sit down and like listen to all your favorite songs, and then you start to hear things you never heard before. That can be really cool. Or just a really nice pair of speakers. I used to work in a music studio, and in between classes that I was teaching at the music studio, I would just like put on my favorite songs on these giant speakers and just listen to all the little details that I couldn't never hear before. Hey Keshav, how are you doing? I think that hopefully I'm saying that right. So we can do some dubstep-y sound design. I haven't listened to a lot of newer Virtual Riot stuff, but we can definitely talk about different kinds of growls. Is there a particular song or sound that you want me to take a listen to? I can just pull it up and we can listen to it, and then we can try to dissect it and see. That's always a fun way to do it. Let me switch up some things here real quick. Let me grab this and grab this so you guys can hear it too. All right. Let's check out Chroma by Virtual Riot. Give me 1 second to pull this up. I'm probably gonna get copyright struck for this, but whatever. We'll just jump around a little bit. So I'm assuming you want the sound during the drop. Got the build up here. Yeah, there's like 5 or 6 different sounds in there. Is there any one particular you want me to focus on, or just a general overview of this kind of sound design? And I'm also not going to be able to guarantee I'll be able to get this exactly sounding the way it is. Just the build up part. So do you want the build or the drop? Because there's going to be kind of different things going on here. All right, so this part is just a bunch of drums, like some like almost like drum and bass kind of drums with like a rising pitch sound. Does it get faster? Yeah, and so there's like a weird plucky sound that happens at the first part of the drop, and then there's like a noisy response. So I'm gonna kind of like just talk through it first, and then we'll start building it. I find it's easier to kind of understand things that way. So we have this like weird plucky thing happening, and then this kind of distorted thing is a response. So it's like a call and response between those two things. We got the pretty plucky sound, and then we got the like tearing distorted sound. Yeah, so, and each one of the responses is different. So a big thing I like to think about when thinking about this kind of sound design is you have call and response like a choir does, right? So you have one sound, which is the weird plucky sound, and then you have response number 1. And you go back to the plucky sound, and you have response number 2, and it just goes back and forth between those. And each time there's a response, it sounds a little different. Sweet. Also trying to make sure I keep up with chat. So yeah, so let's do some of the responses because those are going to be easier. They're kind of like these, like that little kind of sound. So most likely the way he's making those sounds is going to be using something like Serum. You can do the exact same sound design inside of Wavetable if you want to. These are both really excellent tools, but either one of these will work. So I'm probably going to use Serum because I haven't used it in a while, and it's probably more accurate to what he's actually doing. Sure, if you want to start with the build, we can start with the build. The build is going to be mostly like rising sound. Yeah, it's something with like a really long rising sound kind of in the background. And so if I were to try to make that kind of sound, we can start with just like a saw wave kind of sound like this, just the default how Serum starts. Jeff, I'm not sure if I understand the question. Before you do sound design, what do you need to know? Is that what you're asking? So we're gonna start with this kind of sound, and it's basically a really long pitch envelope. So the pitch is gonna be changing over time. So to do that, we can take envelope number 2 over here. We can make this attack really long, and we can apply envelope 2 to either the fine tuning of the pitch or the semitone of the pitch, depending on how we want to do it. So if we do fine tuning here, let us do something like this. As I play a note, the pitch is really slowly going to go up over time, like that. We can make this really long. and it changes the pitch over time. Is there a vocal sample in the build-up? Let me listen to it again. Just the little vocal samples where they're saying like "let's go" and things. And then there's that little choppy thing, and then another vocal sample. So here, as I'm doing this, it's doing that pitch bend, but it's not enough. We want it to be more noticeable. So what we're going to do is we're going to unmap it there, and we're going to try mapping it to the semitone. So now, that's not smooth enough. Here it's going to be kind of moving up by semitone, which is not going to sound the way it does either. So what we're going to do instead is, this should just by default respond to pitch bend, if I'm not mistaken. If we plug in a note here, we can just go to our automation, go to the MIDI control, and there's a built-in pitch bend right here. Get this out of the way. And we're going to make this go up over time. Something like that. So we can just make this clip really long. We'll make this like 4 bars long. So we have one note with a really long pitch bend to create that kind of rising sound. Over time. So by default, and I'll have to double check inside Serum because I haven't done pitch bend inside Serum, there's going to be a pitch bend range, unison range. Where is the pitch bend range? Oh, it's right here. So the pitch bend range here goes to -2 semitones to +2 semitones. So as you do that automation, it's going to cap out at 2 in either direction. But if you change this here to be like 12 semitones, it's going to go up much farther. So you can change the range down here. And this is a setting you're going to find in basically every synthesizer, but it might be in a different place depending on where you're doing it. So that's kind of the starting point. So if I wanted this to go up like 2 octaves, we get this nice, really long pitch bend up, which is really, that's the kind of the background sound that's happening during that build that's creating that kind of rising tension, right? Starting here in the background. His sounds a little cooler than mine does because we don't necessarily just need to use a saw wave. There's lots of ways we could kind of like start tweaking this and making it sound a little better. So one way might be to like turn on some unison, which makes it sound a little cooler. There's a little bit too much detune for me on the unison, so I'm going to turn this down a little bit. That sounds a bit cooler. We also don't need to just use the saw wave. We can use like any other kind of weird waveform that we want and see if we can get something that sounds kind of cool. And at around 52 seconds, there is a background vocal. So that little choppy guy right there, is that what you're talking about? I don't think that's a vocal sample. Oh yeah, there's a little vocal sample that pops in there in the background. That you just need to grab a vocal sample and process it a bunch to make it do that. But the little choppy thing is actually really fun and easy to make. Yeah, that's a vocal sample that it sounds like it's being filtered in the background. And in that case, you just have to find a vocal sample for it. But going back to this rising sound, and then from here you could like start tossing other effects onto it. You could put some distortion on it, and that would make it sound cooler. Something like that. And you can kind of tweak it to your own personal taste. Whatever you want. The big thing is just the big long pitch bend over a really long period of time to create that rising sound. Another one of the sounds that I heard in there was that kind of chopping thing where it kind of sounds like it's speeding up or slowing down. And that's also pretty easy to make. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. In fact, we can do it on this. And that is to use the auto pan audio effect. The choppy part was probably just, I mean, you could have done it on the master, but you probably just did it on whatever like the main sound was. Let me listen to it one more time. Yeah, I don't think you did it on the master because there's the bass is doing it too, and the bass is doing a slightly different pattern. So I probably just took a sound, and to do the chopping, you could do it manually by hand, and that's kind of a pain in the ass to do. So we're going to use the auto pan audio effect. And to do that, I'm going to turn the amount, and this pans it back and forth left and right, which is kind of cool. However, if we change the phase and turn the phase down to 0%, that means that instead of panning it back and forth, it's turning up the volume of the left and right at the same time, which essentially makes it chop. And we can change the speed right here. So then all you need to do is automate this thing. So for example, if in the example we're looking at, he didn't do it on the rising sound, he did it on a different sound, but this is the technique, right? So this is allowing us to chop it. And you could sync this to the grid. However, in this situation, it jumps from one value to the next, where in the example we're listening to, it really smoothly speeds up and slows down. Yeah, you can do it on white noise. You can do it on literally anything, and it sounds cool. They do a lot for like film trailers. They'll have like the big action sequence in the film trailer. And then they use this to like, when like just a little slow motion section, it'll like, or speeds up or whatever. It's really easy to do, and it works on everything. The trick is you just take your amount, turn to 100%, phase down to 0%, and then adjust the rate kind of to taste. So if we were to go in here, check out our automation, we could have this like speed up and then slow down or whatever you want. Which, when you combine it with the rising of pitch, again, it creates a lot of tension, which is a really cool effect to do for something like a build. So yeah, that's kind of the process there, and you can put anything you want. He probably just took like a really basic synth patch and then used something like this to chop it and slice it like that, and then just automated the speed to make it speed up and down. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Have I not talked about this in any videos before? I feel like this is a great one. Maybe I'll make him a video about it just so other people can know about it. Maybe I just assumed people kind of knew about this trick. So yeah, so that's kind of two different things that are going on in the build section. And he reuses the choppy thing. It happens later on in the song, right before the drop happens. So if we listen to this, there's that rising sound with really big drums and a vocal sample. Kick drum speeds up. He uses the choppy again, and then another vocal sample, and then drop. Is that making sense? Now, the main sound here, I think, is actually really interesting. And I'm gonna be real honest that off the top of my head, I can only guess at how he's making that, and I might not be able to get it super, super close. But we can try our best. It sounds like there's actually two things. There's like a higher pitched synth that's doing like a nice little plucky thing, and then there's like a medium pitched synth that's also doing a similar plucky thing at the same time. All right, so once again, we are going to try using Serum because, again, it's most likely that he was using Serum for something like this. Yeah, so for the rest of the build, is basically the kick drum started slower and then got faster. So if we were to, all my stuff gets reset all the time and it drives me crazy. These kicks are going to be terrible. Let's do it with an 808. Jeez. Cool, yeah, we'll just use this guy. So basically you're going to start with a kick drum that's going to be at a certain speed. And then every so often, you're just going to double that speed. So the first bar is going to be quarter notes. And the, sorry, I keep losing my train of thought when I'm trying to read chat. So the speed at which it speeds up is totally up to you. And it will vary from song to song. But in this situation, we're going to have one bar of quarter notes. And then we're going to double up the speed. So then they're going to be eighth notes for a little bit. And I'm just using Command D to duplicate it. And then they're going to be 16th notes for a little bit. And then after that, they're going to be 32nd notes. And again, you can spread this out however you want, but it's just going to be basically this. Something like that. And again, this can be short, this can be long, this can be however you want. And then you can combine that with things like filter sweeps. So at the same time as it's speeding up, you can either have a filter sweep down or you can have filter sweep up. Hey man, if you need to go to sleep, get some sleep. I do this every Tuesday, and also all these videos get uploaded later on, so you can always check out the videos later on. But I'm glad that you're here for right now. So in this situation, maybe you want the filter to start low and then move up over time. So we're going to use auto filter, perfect for this kind of thing. We're going to right click here, we're going to hit show automation. We're going to have the filter start low and then move up over time. Or we can have it go the other direction. So depending on how you want to kind of set it up, you can do something like this. Either way, that's another way to add motion to it. So when you combine things like your rising sound, you get all these different things creating tension simultaneously, and that's how you make a good build, ideally. Oh my God, I'm not gonna be able to figure out how to say your name. Or is it? It's either Ornob or Ornob. One of those two, I'm hoping. Yeah, so you take these ideas, you take the drums changing. You can do the same thing with snares too, and have like the really similar kind of thing going on. Let me grab a snare. Sure, we'll try this one. And we can have it have the exact same drum pattern if we want, or even a different drum pattern if we want. Oh god, that's a terrible snare. See if these have reset yet. Nope. I'll take this one. Or a knob. All right, cool. Yeah, you can always just right-click to go to automation. That's really, really handy. So yeah, so combination of these things help us our build. Put some vocal samples on there. You know, filters moving up, filters moving down. Yeah, snare or clap. The snares and clap you can use interchangeably in the song. They both kind of fill the same role. Yeah, right-click everything. You never know what's going to happen there. And then let's actually have this guy end a little earlier. So we can do this. And let's go to this here. So now they both end at the same time. They both end right there. And then right here is where we're going to put our choppy sound. So I guess we haven't done anything here yet. We'll take that. And we lost our auto filter, our auto pan. We put that there. I'm going to turn that up, turn the phase down. We're going to play with the speed. And we'll make this just like a really high note. Make this 4 bars. That's going to happen right here. And then we will go to our frequency and do something like that. So let's try this out, see what happens. Sounds terrible. All right, let's, number one, make this sound way cooler by cranking up some unison, picking a different sound, giving it a little bit of modulation, and then making this way faster. So it's going to start here. Yeah, something like that. And then you just crank up the volume on this, and maybe not quite as fast. Sorry if I'm jumping around a bunch. I keep on kind of just improvising here. And let's put some more effects on this guy. Put a little phaser and a little overdrive. Yeah, that's kind of the idea. It's not perfect, but it only took me 2 seconds. And that's basically what he's doing this build, on top of having more drums there and more vocal samples. And then vocal sample, and then right into the drop. Does that make sense? I mean, I guess we could just like keep talking about doing builds, because there's a lot of different techniques in here. To making a build work is probably the most difficult part about a song like this. Like, a lot of people, when they think about this kind of music, they think like the drop is really where all the cool stuff is happening. But in my mind, the build make or breaks the whole song. There's tons of cool drops out there, but if you get a really cool build, it creates all the tension and makes the drop work. If the build doesn't work, the drop doesn't work. Cool. So yeah, so other things that are really important when it comes to builds and drops and tension and release is, number one, you may have noticed that my drum build, there's a whole bar of silence right here. Same thing with my rising sound, there's a whole bar of silence right here. And then we're kind of filling in that first half of that bar with a little bit of something here. And then the next half of the bar would be our vocal sample. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you stopping by. I'm glad you're enjoying the videos. So there's a very specific reason that this doesn't go all the way to the drop and that this doesn't go all the way to the drop. And it has to do with volume and dynamics and how our ears perceive volume. Basically, if everything is, if your build is getting louder and louder and louder, and then you just, and so like say my hand here represents the volume of the song. So the build's getting louder and louder and louder. You hit peak volume during your build, and then if you just go directly into the same volume of the drop, it doesn't feel super impactful because the way our ears perceive volume is relative. So if we've been hearing something that's really loud for a long time and we hear more things that are loud, we don't notice it as much. However, if your volume goes up and up and up and up, and then you turn the volume down for a second, right before the drop happens, and then the drop is really loud, you have this kind of like thing that goes like up, up, and then down, and then right back up, which means the drop feels like it hits harder, even though it might be the exact same volume as your build. So yeah, so you could reduce the volume on your build a tiny bit, or you could do what Virtual Riot is doing, and a lot of people do, which is use negative space. Use the lack of sound to kind of fill in that space. And so that's what he's doing with this little vocal sample right before the drop happens. So it gets quiet, loud again. So that's a really fantastic tool or technique to try out if you're noticing that your drops are not hitting as loud as you think they should. Give yourself a little bit of space. That's why you always get those little vocal samples right before the drop. It's super, super effective. Even if it's only for a quarter note or a half a bar or even a bar if you want to like really create a lot of tension. So be thinking about that. That's a really easy way to just get more out of the transition from your builds to your drops. It's going to make them feel a lot more impactful, because if your build is louder than your drop, it just doesn't feel good. It's just like, it just doesn't feel satisfying. So negative space, you know, the absence of sound can create tension, which is like a really cool concept to think about. Other than that, so we talked about rising in pitch. We talked about filters moving up and down. We talked about using little choppy things here. So I got a bunch of people asking questions. Yes, Stan, if you got some tips for putting vocals and drops, drop them in chat. Well, I wanted everybody to share their knowledge. So after party, as far as samples these days, in the days before Splice, I used to grab them from all over the internet. These days, it's really hard to argue with Splice because everything's all right there. So I don't have a lot of places. Sometimes I'll get samples from like websites that'll just like, if I'm on an email list for something I signed up for a long time ago, sometimes people just send me samples, but I don't often hunt out samples beyond Splice these days. So Jeanette was asking, does automating the stereo width cause phasing, like making the build up mono? So it could theoretically cause phasing. I wouldn't worry about it too much, and I wouldn't worry about making a whole section of your song mono. Just make specific sounds mono. So things like the kick drum should be mono. Vocals are going to be in mono for the most part. Maybe some of your vocal layers will be off to the side. A lot of times I like my snare to be in mono, but I wouldn't worry too much about automating stereo width during something like a build in particular. Yeah, pitched up vocal samples are great for drops. It's a great way to kind of layer things together. Yeah, Looperman is great. I agree with that. ADSR has some cool sample packs and things out there on it. Trying to think of any others that I've used recently. Yeah, a lot of times I'll just kind of like scour around. A lot of times I'll check out like if there's plugin companies, if they have like sample packs that they release for cheap. But I'm not been super into like hunting down lots of samples. All right, let me think real quick about other techniques for builds that are worth mentioning. Also, if anybody else has any questions about anything that is not related to a build drop situation, you are also more than welcome to toss that in chat. So we got our drum build. Yeah, I think doing things like pitch bends on anything works really well. You know, pitch bends on vocals can work really well. One of the things I actually like to do a lot is instead of doing something like this, where the kick and the snare are doing like the exact same pattern, tweak it a little bit so that this one's doing a slightly different pattern, or maybe this one speeds up at like a different timing. And then do a couple more of these guys. And you could have like drum fills inside of your drum build, and that can work really well. Oops. Or maybe put something like that. So something like that. So they're not doing the exact same thing. Yeah, white noise riser is another way. So in this riser is very much like a pitch bendy riser. We can also do one with white noise, and those are super easy to make from scratch. And you can use pretty much any synthesizer you want. Since we're on the Serum kick, I'll just keep using Serum. But pretty much every synthesizer is going to have a white noise oscillator or a noise oscillator. The noise oscillator inside Serum is kind of interesting because it's actually a sampler. It's playing a noise sample. Just sounds like that. And we can go in here and where's just the white noise? You can grab anything you want. A lot of these are actually really cool. That can work. So we take something like this, and in this case, we just have a filter that moves up with it. So we can turn our filter, make sure it receives from our noise oscillator, have this start low, turn the volume up, and then just make the filter move up over time. And use that as a noise sweep. Yeah, Kishav, one of the best ways to get better at producing and mixing is to sit down, listen to your favorite track, close your eyes, and see if you can individually pick out every sound. See if you can like identify them in your brain. And it's really useful for learning mixing. Like that's how I think I got a lot better at mixing, is just identifying each sound individually. And it also helps you with your sound design because you can be like, you can kind of divide and conquer. You can listen to each sound individually, think about how they made that, and then kind of recreate it yourself, as opposed to like consuming the music as like one big wall of sound. It's like it's a bunch of individual sounds that make up the whole thing. It's a really great exercise to try out. So that kind of noise sweep, super common, going either direction to build tension. So it's literally just white noise going in through a low pass filter, works great. And you can also try out different kinds of noise. to do all kinds of different sweeps depending on what it is you're into. Sometimes just pure basic white noise can be a little... Actually sounds really cool. Pure white noise can be a little boring, so you can try out different oscillators in here, different noise oscillators. Some can be really cool. And they all kind of do that kind of sound, and you just automate this filter moving up to create that kind of tension. Yeah, so there's tons of cool creative options for white noise. I mean, white noise can be just as a way to generate sound, and then you filter out to do things like these noise sweeps, and then you can also toss on like other effects on top of it to give it a more tonal quality. So things like either the resonators or the spectral resonators. So if you were to like toss this on here, and now I do the same thing. So in the virtual riot song you just played, I don't think there's a noise sweep, but this is just another really common technique for creating tension or doing big build kind of transitions. So you'll hear it a lot, but he didn't use it in the example you specifically sent me. Janef, I took the basically the white noise with the filter we were just working with, and then I went to the resonators audio effect, and I just grabbed one of the presets in here. These all sound really cool, and it's a really cool way to like make like add like a tonal quality to like a noise sweep. They all sound pretty awesome. So yeah, check those out. It's a good way to like creative use of white noise. So CJ was asking, can Ableton turn a melodic loop into a multi-sample instrument? Kind of. So it depends on how you want to do it. There's a couple of different ways to approach it. Are you talking about basically like taking a melodic sample and then chopping it up so you can play it out with each note being on a different key of your MIDI controller? I'm assuming that's what you're asking about. Because if so, there are multiple ways to do that. Let's find like a guitar or something like that. I don't know if it'll be able to handle that one. I just want some like plucking. Give me a little like pluck. Those are all individual samples. Just give me a guitar. With like really clean notes. That's all I'm asking for here. Cool, we'll try this one. So one way to do it is just to grab the simpler instrument and then grab your melodic sample and toss it in here and put it in slice mode. In slice mode, each one of these sounds becomes a different sample that I can just play out. Again, let's find a little cleaner one. This one should work. So I can play them out individually. So that's one way to do it. And it works better if you have something with really like space in between the notes, which is what I was trying to find. Maybe something like that in slice mode. That kind of works. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is if you were to just toss this on a clip, on a clip slot, and right-click on it, and hit Slice to New MIDI Track. This is going to create an entirely new MIDI track with each individual sample in this clip, or each individual transient being a new slice on a drum rack. So here's the drum rack, and each one of those, and you can play those individually. And if you play it out, here's basically the MIDI version of the exact same thing as it was in audio. So those are the two ways to do it, to just be able to take like a melodic clip and then slice it up, and so you can replay it on a MIDI controller. You either just toss it in simpler, put it in slice mode. You can also adjust the sensitivity on slice mode here. So you can have fewer slices or more slices depending on how you adjust the sensitivity. Or you can load it up as an audio clip, right-click, slice to new MIDI track, and then creates an entirely new MIDI track and puts all of them in a drum rack for you. They will detect different notes of the sample and then use those notes to play notes through the scale. There's not going to be a setting like that in live CJOA, unfortunately. If I'm understanding what you're asking, where it basically can kind of like read the sample and like create an instrument based off of the sample that you have in there. You could do that manually inside of Sampler, but that would be a lot of work. There's not going to be like an automatic way to do it. Yeah, that unfortunately, there's no auto way. You have to like manually go in, make a multi-sample instrument inside of Sampler, and then build it yourself, which is unfortunate. That'd be super cool. I wouldn't mind if that was a feature that existed. Yeah, I mean, we already have the convert to harmony and convert to melody options, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that might come down the road in the future. I appreciate all the questions you guys have today. So Afterparty is asking, I can't find a good 808 tom sample. What Ableton synth could I use to replicate one? Specifically similar to the 808 toms in Project Mammoth Space Sketching. I don't know that song off the top of my head. If you want to recreate any kind of 808 sound, most synthesizers should have that capability. For me personally, I really like Operator for drum synthesis, just because it has all the features and the volume envelopes and everything, and it's really easy to use to do all kinds of drum synthesis. The thing you just need to know if you're going to be doing drum synthesis in oh yeah, Project Mammoth. Okay, I was like, Project Mammoth sounds really familiar. Maybe I listened to that track last week. Yeah, I'll check it out and see what I can find. But if you're going to be doing drum synthesis in Operator, you don't need to use the FM capabilities of Operator. So what you can do over here is, instead of having a routing where you're having like all the FM synthesis, and just go to this mode, which means you're basically all of your oscillators are now parallel, and you're basically just dealing with the 4 oscillator subtractive synthesizer. So this is often how I'll do a lot of my drum synthesis, because oscillator A can be one part of my drum sound, oscillator B can be a different part of the drum sound, and then C can be a different part if I need to. So I'll usually kind of combine those those different oscillators together to create whatever sound I'm going for. So that would be what I would recommend for doing that kind of thing. But I would recommend basically using whichever synthesizer you are most comfortable with, whichever one you're most familiar with, whichever one feels the easiest to use. That would be the best one to synthesize it with. But for me, that's Operator. Yeah, Keyshav, we can definitely hop into some more build components in a moment. I just want to make sure I get through all of the questions in chat. Also, unfortunately, I am going to have to end stream a little bit early today. I have some plans tonight, so I'm only going to be on for another like 10 minutes or so. So I apologize about that. I'll be back on Friday for another regular length stream. Yeah, and kind of following up on what Stan was saying, I think that like any synth can do 808s, pretty much. Almost all of the entire range of what the original OG 808 was making was using very, very synthesis techniques. So almost every synthesizer can do it. It's just whichever one is easiest for you, whichever one the workflow makes the most sense. Keshav, we can definitely talk a little bit more about builds. Normally Fridays we do song feedback, but if we have extra time, I'm down to talk about whatever. I'll also be back next week, same time. And we can definitely talk more about builds and drops and things. Gerardo, you can absolutely copy MIDI from one clip to another. So for example, if I have a bunch of MIDI notes in here, if you just select them, Command C to copy or Control C to copy, go over to a new clip, Command V to paste. You just copy and paste them. That should work pretty much always. I don't know why that wouldn't work. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I do that all the time. I'm always copying and pasting MIDI from one clip to another. It's a great way to just get ideas moved around from one place to another. Keep in mind, it will paste based off of the position of where you click. So if I click here, it pastes them there. But if I click here, it pastes them there. All right, so Stan has a really fantastic question. I love this question. So he's asking, what are my favorite things to modulate inside of Serum? So let's get rid of this. And we're going to go ahead and initialize Serum. So this is, I think, actually probably a much more complicated question than Stan probably realizes. So when you are doing your synthesis and your sound design, one of the biggest issues I find is there are too many choices. You have too many options, too many things to modulate, too many things to change over time. And so sometimes you have to be very picky about where you're applying your modulation. So I'm going to go over some of the big ones that I think are the best, or the places I'll go to the most often. But your mileage may vary depending on your style and how you get influenced. Just don't get too caught up into modulation all the time. Sometimes less is more when it comes to modulation. So first off, because Serum is a wavetable synthesizer, this wavetable position knob here is the obvious choice. It's what makes wavetable cool, wavetable synthesis in general cool. So if I pick one of these more kind of like interesting waveforms, let's pick this one. So if I just play a note, that's sounds okay. It's like not that cool. But if I start adding some motion to this, oops. It's way, way cooler, right? So just a static waveform is nice, but motion on your wavetable is even bigger. Yeah, Janef, the noise oscillator over here is just a noise oscillator with a bunch of different kinds of noise built into it. So it's just for adding noise to your sound. There's some really cool things you can do with this that I don't think I'll have time to get into today, but you can do some fun stuff with it. So if I want to add some modulation here, a little bit of LFO on something like the wavetable position, just makes that sound way cooler. So that's the obvious answer number one. Obvious answer number two is filter frequency. So much of subtractive synthesis is based around using filters to take out part of your sound. So by applying an LFO to the filter cutoff, that's how we can do a lot of our sound design, just by moving those around. So those are the two obvious ones. The slightly less obvious one is going to be this guy right here. These are a bunch of cool, weird effects. So I'm actually going to turn off both of these guys. So for example, if we were going to do like the bend plus minus, this is going to basically, if it's in the middle, it's normal. But if you go one direction, it squeezes it towards the middle. If you go the other direction, it pushes it out towards the sides. So instead of moving up and down in our wavetable, we're kind of like squishing it towards the middle or squishing it out, which is a really cool effect. So putting some modulation on that can be really cool, especially when combined with a different modulation on the wavetable, which is kind of super fun. So those are my top three things. Whatever effect I have in here, and there's a bunch of different kinds of effects, and they all do different things, and they're all really cool. And then that wavetable position and then filter frequency are like the three easy, obvious choices for modulation. Hopefully that makes sense. And then somebody was asking about free plugins as an alternative to Serum. And Janef was mentioning Vital. I totally agree. Vital is a fantastic free option. The other one that I always recommend personally is Wavetable. If you own the suite version of Live, you own Wavetable, which is itself a wavetable synthesizer that can do a lot of the has a lot of the same features as Serum and can do a lot of the same things, and it's easier to use. So if you are learning synthesis and you're learning sound design, Wavetable I highly recommend as a way to kind of like learn your way around it. Other than that, in terms of modulation inside Serum, there's going to be a lot of my kind of like go-tos, and then of course like modulating your different effects. It's one of the cool things about it is you can like add little bits of modulation, different kinds of effects. But filter frequency, oscillator position, whatever effect you have built in here. I generally don't modulate the detune. I usually kind of leave that where I want. Modulating things like volume can be really cool, or modulating things like the pitch can also be really cool to do some weird pitch bendy stuff. Yeah, Wavetable does some really amazing things. I have gotten a lot of flack over my life for telling people I like Wavetable better than Serum, because a lot of people I work with or students I work with are like totally addicted to Serum. And Serum's cool. I like Serum a lot, but I like Wavetable better. And plus, Wavetable's free if you own the suite version of Live. Sweet. So that's all I have time for today. But I would, very much appreciate you guys showing up, having lots of questions. For those guys who are just joining us, you guys, it's been super cool to have new people join. So appreciate it. I do this every Tuesday, and then Friday I do the song feedback stream. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Check out my videos, all that kind of thing. But yeah, you guys are great, and I apologize for having a shorter stream today. I might try to make it up by doing an extra stream maybe tomorrow night if you guys are around. Yeah, there's a couple features that Serum has that Wavetable doesn't. The big thing for me is the weird filter types. That you get really cool filters inside of Serum, and you're kind of limited in terms of your filter types inside of Wavetable. But other than that, almost all the big features they both have. And then there's a few features that Wavetable has that Serum doesn't, and there's a few features that Serum has that Wavetable doesn't. But they're both really cool. But Wavetable, I think, is easier to learn and easier to make sound good, whereas Serum can do a lot of cool stuff, but can be a little trickier to make it work. All right, but yeah, I appreciate you guys, and I will see you guys later this week, hopefully. If not, I'll see you next week. Thanks for popping by.